I'm glad I didn't pay for this book because I did not like this book at all. This is the sequel to A Girlfriend's Guide to Murder. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Girlfriend's Guide is that old Bravo show. The 2009 felt sort of like late 90s to me, and I don't know if that's just me putting my own stuff on it. But anyway, sidetracked. So this, yes. Hi everyone, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. You are tuning in on a day when I'm going to talk about basically the books that I've read this fall. So I have not done a wrap up since what I read in September. And if you saw my catch up, what's up kind of video that I posted, you know that I did National Novel Writing Month in November. So I only read 4 books that month, but I do have kind of like a mishmash of books that I wanted to talk about. So we're just gonna kind of do another what I've been reading lately, kind of a catch up. So in no particular order, mostly very heavy on the thriller side. So let's just dive right in. The Lost Night by Andrea Bartz is a book that I had picked up for Buzzwordathon back in September, and the word was night, and I didn't get to it in September, but I wanted to read it, so I wound up reading it in October, and I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I really liked it. So this book is told in 2 different timelines, which is a trope that I absolutely adore, and I will say I somehow had it fixed in my head that the first timeline of them just out of college was the late 90s, and then we fast forwarded 10 years, but it's actually 2009 and then 10 years later, but it's totally fine. I will say the 2009 timeline gave me late 90s, early aughts vibes to it. But anyway, we have a group of friends who are living in these lofts in Brooklyn, and they're sort of like these artist community lofts where a whole bunch of people are living together. It's like people who've just graduated from college, so like people can't afford much, and Brooklyn, it's just depicted as very like hipster, and people sort of not, squalor's the wrong word, but they're not living in like the best place. So this loft is like a little bit shady. There's some drug deals going on. There are parties every night. It's very much like an extension of college where they do like those around the world things on people's floors where like everyone's doors open, everyone's in and out of everything. There's live music playing. There is just a lot of blackout drinking and drugs and stuff happening here. And lo and behold, one of the girls is found murdered in her apartment one of the nights. And nobody can really piece together what happened, and nobody can really remember what happened. And we fast forward, again, 10 years. That group of friends is not really friends anymore, but something happens that reunites them. And our main character, Lindsay, is sort of begrudgingly revisiting that time in her life, in her memory, and she realizes how much she had forgotten. But things start piecing together, and she becomes fixated on finding out what happened to her friend. And her friend Edie was sort of the it girl of the time, and it's been this great mystery what happened to her. So I loved the investigative part of it. What's great about sort of the 2009 timeline, and what I think would have been even better if it was set a little bit earlier, is there was no Instagram, and people had cell phones, but it wasn't what it is today. So sort of tracking back to what things happened that night and trying to piece together things is harder. There's like some camcorder video, so people weren't taking videos on their cell phones. So again, it's not like it is today. I think it could have been better if it was set a little bit earlier to put more constraints on that sort of like social media footprint. Like there's definitely like some MySpace references in here, which is amazing. But I enjoyed it. I kind of had a suspicion about one thing, and I will say like my beef with it. So like I enjoyed the book, but the ending, well, not in the sense of like I was dissatisfied with like the whodunit, but you get this like villain diatribe at the end where it's like pages and pages of the villain telling us why. And I just, that sort of like took the air out of the balloon, because I felt like it was page turny and twisty, and like there were so many different aspects of it that I liked, but that really just sort of like no. Like, I don't need the twirling of the mustache and here's why kind of a thing. So I will continue to read Andrea Bart's books. I really enjoyed her writing. It was definitely a good, enjoyable read. So I would recommend picking it up, especially if you're interested in sort of like that time, or that time has some sentimental meaning to you. I don't know. That sounds stupid, but you know what I mean. So that's that. Oh man. The next book I picked up is one that has been sitting on my shelf forever, and it's The Vanishing Season by Joanna Schaffenhausen. I don't want to mess that up. And this is actually the first in a series, which I didn't know at the time, but I am actually going to continue the series. So spoiler alert, I really enjoyed this one. But this was given a first crime novel award winner, Mystery Writers of America, and it is a serial killer book. So it's got all the things that I love. And we have a woman named Ellery who is living in a small town in Massachusetts. And she is a cop there. And when she was younger, she was kidnapped by a serial killer. And obviously she survives. It's not a spoiler alert because she's alive on page 1. It's the whole premise of the book. So in her small town, there have been sort of a series of disappearances that have been taking place over the course of a couple years. And nobody in that town knows who she is. Nobody knows that she is the girl who escaped this serial killer back in the day. But her antenna is kind of up because something about it just doesn't feel right to her. And she is trying to pursue this case, but her like chief of police, like she's just not having it. Like, this is like a small town where a lot of bad things don't happen, and they've got all these just valid explanations for where these people went. You know, people leave, people get up and just walk away from their lives. There's no evidence that makes it seem like there's crimes at play here. So she makes a call to the agent, special agent, who rescued her back in the day. And his name is Reed, and Reed happens to have a little bit of time on his hands, and he winds up coming to Massachusetts to help her out. And we get their investigation mixed with some things from the past, and I just really liked it. It's a short book, like I have to prove it, but it packs so much in it, and it goes at a good clip. I really enjoy their rapport with each other. I like their relationship. I think there's like the perfect amount of complexity to them without it being like over the top and ridiculous, and you can understand the relationship, which they have not been in touch all these years. And she was like 14 when she was kidnapped. So he is older than her, and them sort of meeting as adults, if you will, even though Reed was a special agent at the time. He has a lot of notoriety to him. He became very famous for kind of cracking that case back in the day. And you just get a lot of the weaving of what happened back then and what's happening now. I was reading this while I was doing National Novel Writing Month, and I'm in the mindset of, if anybody is, sidebar here of course, a writer and you follow the Save the Cat outline of how to write a book and the beats, and at certain points in the book when you need certain beats. So I have been very tuned into lately making note of when certain things happen and having expectations at like the 10% mark and the 25% mark. And this book nailed all of those things. So I was definitely reading this with a writer's eye in mind at the same time. And I was almost taking notes on it to try and figure out what was happening and sort of putting my clues together. So there is something I figured out in it, but not, I think, because it was obvious. I don't always read books looking for the thing. I was looking for it while I was reading this book. But again, I recommend it. I am going to pick up more books in the series. I think there's 4 books out now, so I'm really interested to see what happens next for Ellery. I thought it was really well done, very atmospheric. Even though this doesn't take place in Boston, I'm like trash for anything in Massachusetts, and I would recommend it if you're looking for some serial killer, cop, FBI, special agent kind of vibes. You're going to get it all in this one. The next book is Sisters by Daisy Johnson, and I read this from the library, and this was definitely on my like curiosity, piqued interest, semi-anticipated list. And in a nutshell, I'm glad I didn't pay for this book because I did not like this book at all. It's super short. It basically feels like a fever dream. And I just didn't like it. It just annoyed me. So this is about two sisters. Their names are July and September, which are the months they were born. They were born 10 months apart, so September's the older one. And something happens and they need to leave their school. They're high school students, and their mom like whisks them away to this cabin that their dad's family owns, and like their dad died years ago. So they are basically like holed up in this cabin, and the mom is like holed up in her bedroom, and it's just the story of the two sisters. And it's told in like twisty timeline. It's like, it's all fever dream. So it's like you're all over the place. You're not quite sure which way is up. I figured out what the thing was. Not the what happened, but I figured out what the twist of the book was. I'm trying to like read the synopsis to make sure I'm not giving anything away. I don't know. Like the review is like, and like the New Yorker raved. Lots of people raved about it. This could just be a me thing. But it's like written with radically inventive language and imagery. It just was like all over the place for me. I think it's like 150 pages. I read it really quickly. I kind of like hate read it because I was curious to see where it was going to go, but I was not having a good time while I was doing it. So womp womp. They can't all be winners, but yeah, I was not a fan of this book at all. The next book, I loved the premise of this book. And this is a book I was hearing a lot of great things about. And I want to say like earlier this year, I kind of started to, or maybe it was even like end of last year, I started to get back into legal thrillers and the courtroom, which were things that I always loved. And I was like a hardcore Grisham fan back in the day. And I just love that whole aspect of thrillers, the courtroom, all of it. And I picked up The Holdout by Graham Moore. And this is the UK cover, in case you guys are wondering why it looks different. I know the US cover has like a chair on it because it's a jury is the concept of this. And I love the premise of this, which is that, again, 10 years ago, so we're in two timelines again. You're going to see a lot of multiple timelines, I think, when I'm thinking about the books that we're going to talk about today. And there was a murder case, and one of the jurors just didn't believe that the guy was guilty, and she was the holdout. And and this is not a spoiler, this is the premise of the book, she manages to turn the entire jury. He doesn't get convicted, he goes free, and the murder is never solved. And 10 years later, there's like a true crime TV show who is doing a 10-year reunion about the murder and about the case, and they want to bring all the jurors back together again. It was a huge case in LA. They were sequestered for months on end, and they're bringing the jurors back to this like specific hotel. They're staying in the same rooms they stayed in, like all levels of creepy, right? But like in the best way. And our main character, why don't I know her name? Maya, who is an attorney now. She was, I want to say like in her early 20s when she was on jury duty, and she was a little bit lost in life. Like she was kind of trying to find her footing when she got called for jury duty. She's an attorney now, and she just doesn't want to have anything to do with it because there's been so much backlash. There has been a lot of rage because people were not happy that they set this guy free. But she winds up going. We won't get into why, but it's plausible. She winds up going, and one of the jurors winds up getting murdered at the reunion. Right? Love it. So it turns into Maya trying to figure out who done it. And we go back and forth in time, so we get perspectives from the different jurors from back in the day, and then we see them today, and Maya's trying to piece everything together. So I liked it, but not as much as I wanted to. I know, womp womp. So there was a lot that I did really enjoy about it, and a lot that was having me like stuck to the page. But I will say a couple things. Here's where I kind of lost my path here. For one, so it's a jury. So you got 12 people. So there's a lot of people to keep track of. And I think about, again, writer hat on, the book I'm writing, and I've got a lot of characters. And to me, it all makes sense. Everybody's crystal clear. But trying to follow all these different people, I was like, wait, who was this again? Wait, which one was this? What was their background? What was their thing? So I found myself flipping back a lot, trying to retain it. I will also say I was reading this while I was writing, so I wasn't 100% in. I feel like I was a little bit distracted, so that might have been part of the problem. But there was just a lot of people to keep track of, so I found that like a lot. And the other thing is, so Maya's trying to figure out what happened. And she is following leads, she is chasing down clues, she is tracking down people from back in the day, different witnesses, and she is like legit driving all over California, it feels like. And she's going for like 7-hour drives, and she's just like basically is like driving for days. And maybe this is like, I guess if you're trying to like solve a crime, you kind of get that like fight or flight. Like I feel like it's like when you're getting chased by a bear, like suddenly you can like do amazing things that you never thought you could do before. But like I've spent the better part of my adult life in a city. So I didn't start driving till a few years ago. I mean, I got my license when I was 18, no judgment, but I didn't have a car till a couple of years ago. So I'm not someone who drives a ton, but it was like exhausting. How was she driving all over the place in her friend's Tesla, by the way? So maybe that helped to make it better. But I just felt like she was like, I don't know how she was covering so much ground in what felt like such a short amount of time. And she's talking about how she's like on the road for like 3-4 hours at a clip. So I don't know. It just seemed like a lot of driving around and having to get places. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just being obnoxious about it. I probably am. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ending. I enjoyed the reveal. I did figure something out in this one as well, but again, I was looking for it. So you're gonna find, I'm not gonna say this about every book that I talk about, but it was a good read, but it wasn't great. So, meh. It was fine. There were parts that I liked, there were parts that I didn't. And yeah, I wouldn't rush out to get it, but if you have a curiosity about it, hit up your library for sure. The next book is one I absolutely loved, and it is the second in a series. I don't know if there's actually going to be more to it, but it's a sequel, so I can only tell you so much about it. But it is Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. And this is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And I just love Pip. I love these characters. I love this world. I love this writer. And I will tell you, so this is out in the UK. It's not out in the US now. I think it comes out in January here, maybe. So what I didn't realize originally, so let's rewind. When I read Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I didn't realize that it had come out in the UK earlier than it came out in the US. And I was listening to a podcast with Holly Jackson, and that's how I found out that her sequel was out. I also didn't realize, so this book is set in the UK, which is where Holly Jackson is. I don't know if she's from there or she's based there, but they Americanized it for the US version, and they have it set in Connecticut, which is perfectly fine, but I don't know why they would do that. Like why this wasn't, like why American readers couldn't have read it set in the UK. So if you get ahead of the game like I did and order this from Book Depository or wherever, just know the setting is completely different, even though the people are all the same. So you're not going to get the same Connecticut vibe, but I don't really feel like that matters. So there is a map in this one, just like there's a map in that one. And it's like all the same characters. So the only thing that's different is literally the setting. And I just don't understand. See, like there's a little map. I just don't understand why they changed it. But either way, so just to give you a little backstory, but not give anything away. In book number 1, Pip is a senior in high school, and there was a murder that happened in their small town. I want to say like 5 years earlier. And there was a suspect, and I feel like he was a well-known suspect, or like the police named him a suspect, and then he wound up dying. And there were people in the town who believed he did it. There were people in the town who believed he was innocent. And Pip, who's got a thing for crime, decided to use that case as her senior thesis project, basically, and wanted to investigate what happened because the boy who died was friends of her best friend's older sister. So it's so well done. It's transcripts, it's interviews, it's police notes. And I just love the way the whole book is put together. And then in this book, we have a new mystery. Pip now has a true crime podcast, and she is following the trial from book number 1 and then someone else in her town winds up getting murdered, and she starts looking into that. So I really enjoyed it. I love the mixed media that's in this. I love Holly Jackson's writing. I really enjoy Pip. It gives me all the vibes of like Stevie from Truly Devious, who I love, and like a bit of like Charlotte Holmes from the Holmes and Watson series from Brittany Cavallaro. And I just love it. Like it's a quick read. It's a good read. The only thing I will say that I was bummed about is, again, the beginning of this, she has a true crime podcast and she's following the trial. And when the new murder happens in town, she starts to do sort of like a season 2 of her podcast on it. But like somewhere along the way, the podcast just kind of like fizzles out and we're not getting the podcast version of it. So she's still investigating the crime and all of that. But it's more of, I recorded the podcast and I uploaded it. So you're not getting that podcast vibe of it. And I really like that. And I like that form of the story and that form of the media. So I was missing that a little bit as we got later into the novel, but it doesn't take away from the story itself. It's just more of, I'm in like a super duper true crime podcast mode right now. And there's other books that have some mixed media in it and the podcast vibe. So it's just sort of like the headspace I was in, which is one of the reasons why I picked up this book, because I wanted to read it now. But I will say, if you have not picked up book number 1, totally do it. It's a fun series. Like I said, I don't know if she's doing more. I really hope so. The door is open for more in this one. And I don't even think she set out to make it a series, but the book just lends itself to a series, obviously. So highly recommend. So you can get it, like I said, Book Depository now, or if you want to wait for it to come out in the US, you can do that too. So another book that has podcast vibes, but you don't really get podcast in it, but I'm not mad about it, is Allison Galen's Never Look Back. And I loved this book. I read this in 3 days, compulsively like a crazy person. I was all in. And this has everything I want from a book. We have multiple timelines with multiple perspectives. There's a little bit of a podcast vibe. It is dark. It is twisted. If you have not read Allison Galen before, you know that she will go dark, deep, and twisty on you. And I love it. I love her writing. I love her characters. I love the messed upness of it all. It's a messed up world in Allison Galen's land. But this is 3 different timelines, and you have 1976. So I'm just reading some of this from the back because I don't want to mess it up. So you have teenage murderers April and Gabriel terrorize Southern California, killing dozens of victims over a course of 13 days before they perish in a fire. Or did they? And that's on the back, not spoiling you guys. And then more than 40 years later, we've got our 20-something podcaster, Quentin, who has a connection to the murders and blames his sort of like crappy upbringing on it. So he is digging deep into what actually happened way back then. He's fascinated by April and Gabriel. And then over in New York, we have a film columnist named Robin, and things are not good. She's got some issues with her husband. She's having some problems at work. And something connects all of this. And she winds up getting a call from Quentin about what happened back in the 70s. And she's like, what are you talking about? So it sort of throws everything into question for her. And bad things just happen. So we are piecing together multiple timelines. We are piecing together different mysteries. We are getting multiple perspectives. And I loved all of it. I loved this book. This is just everything I want in a book, everything I need in a book. I can't recommend it enough. I just think she is tremendous. And I don't know why I waited so long to read this. I've had this book for a while and I'm kicking myself, but I'm so happy I read it. I will say I did a little bit of it on audiobook as well, because it was one of those things where I needed to go outside and like go for walks and get some fresh air, but I didn't want to be away from it. So I was listening to the audiobook of it as well. And the audiobook is really, really well done too. So I would pick that up also. I found it at my library. And it's a book that you can't really say much about because I don't want to risk giving anything away, but I would highly recommend it. I think if you were down for the dark and twisty, this is probably maybe for you. And if you haven't read other Allison Galen, I read If I Die Tonight and What Remains of Me, and I'm just excited to just dig deeper into her backlist because I know there's going to be more gems in it. So we're gonna stop it here for today because we don't want these to be 30-minute videos of insanity because I talk too much. So let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about, and I will see you guys the next time I hop on, although let's be honest, I'm filming this all at once, but I'll see you guys in that next video when I post it about more things that I've read lately. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.